My name is Thessaly, and at 61 years old, I did something most people only see in movies. I faked my own death, not for insurance money or to start some exciting new life. I did it because, after 33 years of marriage to Garrison, I knew it was the only way I'd ever be free. He would never let me leave alive. I'd tried twice before, the first time. 12 years ago, I packed a suitcase and made it to my sister's house in Vermont. Garrison found me within 48 hours. He showed up at her door with flowers and tears, apologizing to everyone, promising he'd changed. My sister believed him. I went home. He broke my wrist that night. The second time, 6 years ago, I consulted a divorce lawyer named Mr. Chen. Filed the papers in secret. 2 days later, Garrison came home early from work and found the hidden copies. He beat me so badly, I spent a week in the hospital. Told the doctors I'd fallen down the stairs. They didn't believe me, but I wouldn't press charges. I was too scared after that. I stopped trying to leave. I learned to survive instead. Garrison was a successful commercial real estate developer. Everyone in our town of Ashford, Connecticut loved him. Generous donations to the hospital. Sponsor of the Little League. Always smiling at church on Sundays. Nobody knew that the charming man in public turned into a monster behind closed doors. The verbal abuse started early in our marriage. He'd criticize everything about me. My cooking, my appearance, my intelligence. By our 10th anniversary, the physical violence began. A slap here, a shove there. Over the years, it escalated, black eyes hidden with makeup. Bruises covered by long sleeves even in summer. Constant fear. I became a ghost in my own life. Our 2 children, both sons, had moved away years ago. One lived in California, the other in Texas. They called occasionally, but Garrison had poisoned them against me over the years, making me seem dramatic and unstable. They didn't visit much. My best friend Poet was the only person who knew some of what I endured. We'd been friends since college. 40 years of history. She lived 3 houses down from us. I confided in her often, showed her some of the bruises. She was sympathetic, always encouraging me to leave, offering support. What I didn't know was that Poet had been sleeping with Garrison for 7 years. I discovered it by accident on a Tuesday morning in October. Garrison had left his phone on the kitchen counter while he showered. It buzzed with a text message. The preview showed on the lock screen. Poet's name followed by, "Last night was perfect. I can still taste you. When is she going to book club tonight?" My hands shook as I read it, then another message appeared. "I'm tired of sneaking around. When are you finally going to leave her?" I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My husband and my best friend. For 7 years, all those times I'd cried to Poet about Garrison's abuse. She was sleeping with him, all her sympathetic hugs, her advice to stay strong, her promises that things would get better. Lies. She'd been betraying me the entire time. I heard the shower turn off. I put the phone back exactly where it was and went to the bedroom. My mind raced. I couldn't confront him. That would mean another beating. Maybe worse, I couldn't confront Poet. She'd tell Garrison, and he'd know I knew. I needed to think, to plan. But one thing became crystal clear in that moment. I had to disappear, permanently. I spent the next 3 weeks planning carefully. I couldn't just run away again. Garrison would find me. He had money, connections, and an obsessive need to control me. Divorce would take months, and he'd fight it viciously. Maybe kill me before it finalized. I needed to become someone he couldn't chase. Someone who no longer existed. I researched how people fake their deaths. It's harder than movies make it look. You need a body or convincing evidence of death. You need to disappear completely. New identity, new location, no contact with anyone from your old life. Most importantly, you need help. I found that help in an unexpected place. There's a network of people who assist domestic violence victims in extreme situations. I'd read about them online. An underground railroad for abused women who have no other options. I made contact through an encrypted email. A woman named Mercy responded. She asked detailed questions about my situation, verified my story through old police reports and hospital records. Then she said she could help me, but it would cost everything I had. I'd have to give up my name, my family, my entire past once I was dead. I could never come back. I said yes. Mercy's plan was simple but required perfect timing. We'd stage a car accident on Route 44, a dangerous stretch of road near the Barkhamsted Reservoir. My car would go off the cliff into the water. The reservoir was deep there, Over 60 feet, bodies sometimes took weeks to recover. If they were recovered at all. In that time, I'd be long gone with a new identity. The key was leaving enough evidence that I'd been in the car, but not so much that forensics could prove I wasn't. Mercy had connections, people who'd done this before. She arranged for a donated body from a medical school. A Jane Doe who'd died with no family. The body would be placed in my car after the crash, burned enough to make dental identification impossible, but not so destroyed that it looked suspicious. My dental records would mysteriously disappear from my dentist's office. It sounded crazy, but Mercy assured me it had worked before. The cost was $20,000, everything I'd secretly saved over the past decade. Money hidden from Garrison in a separate account he didn't know about. Small amounts taken from grocery money, from my part-time job at the library. It had taken years to save, now it would buy my freedom. The night of my death was November 15th. A cold, rainy evening, perfect weather for a fatal car accident. I told Garrison I was driving to Hartford to visit an old college friend who was in the hospital. He barely looked up from his laptop. "Be back by 10, he said. "I won't wait up." I kissed his cheek, tasting bile. This was the last time I'd ever see him. I drove to the designated meeting spot, a rest area 10 miles from the reservoir. Mercy was waiting in a van with another woman named Trina. They worked quickly and efficiently. Trina would drive my car to the accident site. She was wearing gloves, a wig that matched my hair color, and clothes similar to mine. Security cameras along the route would show my car being driven by someone who looked like me. At the reservoir, they'd stage the crash. The body would be placed in the driver's seat. My purse, my phone, my wedding ring would all be in the car. Everything would point to me dying in a tragic accident. Meanwhile, I'd be in the van with Mercy, heading to a safe house in Massachusetts. From there, I'd get new identification documents, a new social security number, a new life. "Are you absolutely sure?" Mercy asked me one last time. "Once we do this, there's no going back." "I'm sure," I said, more sure than I've ever been about anything. Trina drove off in my car. Mercy and I followed at a distance in the van. We listened to the police scanner. Waiting at 8:43. We heard it, report of a vehicle in the water at Barkhamsted Reservoir. Possible fatality, single occupant. Emergency services dispatched. My heart pounded, it was real. I was dead. Mercy drove us to the safe house, a small cabin in the woods near Springfield. She explained what would happen next. The police would investigate the crash. They'd find the body, assume it was me. Garrison would identify my personal belongings. The dental records wouldn't match, but with them missing and the body badly burned, the coroner would likely rule it as me based on circumstantial evidence. Within a week, I'd have new documents. Birth certificate, driver's license, social security card, all under the name Lydia Moss. I'd move to Oregon, where Mercy had connections with a women's shelter that could help me find housing and work. I'd never be Thessaly again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my sons. They'd think I was dead. I'd never see them again. Never meet future grandchildren. The price of freedom was everything I'd ever known. The news hit the next morning. Local woman dies in tragic accident. The article described how Thessaly Morrison, 61, had apparently lost control of her vehicle on the rain-slicked road and plunged into the reservoir. Her body had been recovered, but badly burned in the post-crash fire. Her husband, Garrison, was devastated. They showed a photo of him at the accident site, being comforted by neighbors. One of those neighbors was Poet. I stared at the image online. She had her arm around him. Both of them looked appropriately grief-stricken. I wondered how long they'd wait before making their relationship public. Probably a respectable 6 months. Then they'd announce they'd found comfort in each other during this difficult time. Everyone would think it was sweet. The grieving husband and the loyal best friend finding love after tragedy. The thought made me sick. Over the next few days, I watched my own death unfold from the safe house. The funeral was planned for the following Saturday at St. Catherine's Church. There would be a memorial service followed by cremation. Since the body was too damaged for an open casket, Garrison gave interviews to local news, talking about what a wonderful wife I'd been, how much he'd miss me. I watched him cry on camera and wanted to scream. Mercy brought me my new documents on day 5. I was officially Lydia Moss, born in Idaho. No criminal record, clean credit history. She'd created a whole backstory for me. I'd been a teacher, recently widowed. moving to Oregon for a fresh start. She'd even got me hired at a women's shelter in Portland, where I'd do administrative work and help other abuse survivors. Your new life starts now, Mercy said gently. Thessaly is gone, you need to let her go completely. But I couldn't let go yet, not until I saw one more thing. I needed to see my funeral. Mercy strongly advised against it. It's too dangerous. If someone recognizes you, everything falls apart. I'll be careful. I promised. I need closure. She finally agreed but insisted on strict conditions. I'd go in heavy disguise, dark wig, glasses, different makeup. I'd sit in the back. I'd leave before the service ended. And Trina would be with me the entire time as a lookout. The funeral was on Saturday at 2 in the afternoon. Mercy drove us to Ashford, parking 3 blocks from the church. My hands shook as Trina helped me with my disguise. The wig was shoulder-length and black, completely different from my natural gray blonde hair. The glasses were thick-framed. I wore clothes I'd never normally choose. A dark purple dress and heavy boots. We walked to the church separately. Trina went in first, sitting near the middle. I waited 5 minutes, then entered and slipped into the very back pew. The church was packed. I recognized so many faces. Neighbors, people from Garrison's business. Members of our book club, everyone looked somber. At the front, near the closed casket draped with white flowers, sat Garrison, and right beside him, holding his hand, was Poet, not sitting a respectful distance away. Right next to him, fingers intertwined. Her head on his shoulder, my jaw clenched. They weren't even waiting. They were openly together at my funeral. I watched as the service began. The pastor spoke about my life, getting half the details wrong. He made me sound like a saint. Devoted wife and mother, pillar of the community. Garrison got up to give a eulogy. He walked to the podium slowly, dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief. I couldn't believe I was watching this. My beloved Thessaly, he began. Voice breaking, was the light of my life. For 33 years, she made every day brighter. She was patient, kind, and loving. I don't know how I'll go on without her. The audience murmured sympathetically. Several people were crying. I wanted to stand up and scream. Tell them all what a monster he really was. But then Garrison said something that made my blood run cold. Thessaly had been struggling lately. He continued, carefully, with some health issues. Depression. I tried to get her help, but she refused. I can't help but wonder if this accident was really an accident. If maybe she wanted to escape her pain. The audience gasped. He was planting the idea that I'd killed myself, making himself look like the concerned husband who tried to save his troubled wife. Poet stood and walked to him, wrapping her arms around him in comfort. The pastor tried to redirect, saying we shouldn't speculate about such things. But the seed was planted. People were already whispering. I felt Trina's hand on my arm. A warning, we needed to leave soon. But I couldn't move. I was transfixed by the performance happening at the front of the church. Then Poet did something unbelievable. She asked to speak. The pastor looked uncertain but nodded. Poet walked to the podium, tears streaming down her face. Thessaly was my best friend for 40 years. She said, I loved her like a sister. These past few months, I watched her struggle. She was unhappy, felt trapped. She confided in me that she wanted out of her marriage but didn't know how. My hands gripped the edge of the pew. What was she doing? Poet continued, voice shaking. I tried to help her, encouraged her to see a therapist, to talk to Garrison about her feelings. But she was afraid of judgment, afraid of change. I think the weight of it all became too much. She looked directly at Garrison with such sympathy. And I want Garrison to know that Thessaly loved him. Even in her darkest moments, she loved him. She just couldn't save herself. The audience was eating it up. Several people nodded, murmuring about the tragedy of mental illness. Garrison was crying openly now. Poet holding his hand again. They were rewriting history, making me the unstable one, the troubled wife who'd driven herself into a reservoir, making themselves the victims, the loving husband and loyal friend left behind. I stood abruptly. Trina grabbed my arm but I shook her off. I walked down the side aisle toward the front, my heart pounding. People glanced at me curiously but didn't recognize me behind the disguise. I got close enough to see Garrison's face clearly, close enough to see that he wasn't really crying. His eyes were dry, he was performing. And Poet, her expression was almost triumphant. They thought they'd won. They'd gotten rid of me and now they could be together, reaping sympathy and admiration from the whole community. I turned and walked out of the church before I did something stupid. Trina followed me quickly. We got to the van where Mercy was waiting. Drive, I said. My voice was shaking with rage. Mercy pulled away from the curb. What happened? She asked. They're together. I said, at my funeral, holding hands, giving speeches about how tragic my death was. They're making me look like a suicide case while playing the grieving widower and best friend. Mercy's jaw tightened. I'm sorry. I know that's hard to see, but you need to let it go. You're dead, they can't hurt you anymore. But they were hurting me, even from beyond the grave. Garrison was still controlling the narrative, still making me the villain, and Poet was helping him. The woman I'd trusted with my deepest pain for 40 years was using my secrets to paint me as unstable. We drove back to the safe house. I was supposed to leave for Oregon the next day, start my new life as Lydia Moss. But all I could think about was Garrison and Poet, living happily in my house, spending the life insurance money, telling everyone how they'd found love after my tragic death. I couldn't let them get away with it. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to disappear quietly. I'm going back, I told Mercy the next morning. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Absolutely not, you're legally dead. If you show up alive, you'll be charged with fraud, conspiracy, all kinds of crimes. Not to mention, Garrison will kill you for real this time. I don't care, I said. I'm not letting them win. Mercy tried to talk sense into me for an hour. She explained all the risks, all the ways this could backfire. But I was determined, finally. She sighed, if you're going to do this, do it smart, don't just walk up to them. You need leverage, evidence, proof of what he did to you, proof of their affair. Make it public before you reveal yourself. Otherwise, it's your word against theirs. She was right, I needed a plan. Over the next 3 days, I worked with Mercy and Trina to gather evidence. First, we broke into my old house while Garrison was at work. I knew where he kept important documents. In his office safe, behind a painting. Combination was our wedding anniversary. Inside, I found folders of financial records showing the affair payments. Garrison had been giving Poet money for years, disguised as business loans, $30,000 over 7 years. There were also emails printed out, explicit messages between them, planning my future demise. Not explicitly murder, but close enough. Discussions about how much easier life would be when I was gone. We photographed everything and put it back exactly as we found it. Next, I needed evidence of the abuse. My medical records were scattered across 3 different doctors and 2 hospitals. Mercy helped me request copies, forging my death certificate to get access. The records painted a clear picture. 12 visits over 20 years for injuries consistent with domestic violence. Broken bones, bruises, lacerations. Each time with flimsy explanations that the doctors had noted skeptically. There was even one report where a nurse had written, "Patient appears frightened of husband, but refuses to file complaint." With physical evidence secured, I needed witnesses. I reached out anonymously to 3 of my former neighbors. Women I'd been friendly with. Using an encrypted email, I sent them the evidence and asked if they'd ever suspected Garrison was abusive. 2 of them responded immediately. One wrote, "I always knew something was wrong. The way you'd flinch when he raised his voice. The bruises you tried to hide. I'm so sorry, I never said anything." The other wrote, "He was always so controlling. Wouldn't let you go anywhere alone. My husband saw him grab you roughly at a barbecue once. We should have helped you." I asked if they'd be willing to make statements to police. Both said yes. Now I had evidence of abuse, evidence of the affair, and witnesses willing to testify. The final piece was video proof that I was alive. Mercy helped me record a statement explaining everything. Why I'd faked my death, what Garrison had done to me. The affair with Poet, my plan to disappear. I uploaded the video to a private server with instructions to release it publicly in 24 hours unless I canceled the upload. Insurance in case something happened to me when I revealed myself. On a Wednesday morning, 2 weeks after my funeral, I was ready. I called the Connecticut State Police from a burner phone. I told them my name was Thessaly Morrison, and I needed to report domestic violence and insurance fraud. The operator was confused. "Ma'am, Thessaly Morrison died 2 weeks ago in a car accident." "No," I said calmly. "I faked my death to escape my abusive husband. But I'm alive, and I have evidence of crimes committed against me and fraud committed in my name. I need to speak to a detective." There was a long pause, then, "Please hold." 15 minutes later, I was speaking with Detective Omar Rashid from the Major Crimes Unit. He was skeptical at first, clearly thinking I was some crazy person. But when I started reciting specific details about my life, details only the real Thessaly would know, his tone changed. I need you to come to the barracks in Toland, Detective Rashid said. Bring identification and any evidence you have. I'll be there in 2 hours. I arrived with Mercy and Trina as backup. Walking into that police station was terrifying. For all I knew, Garrison had connections there. But Detective Rashid met us personally and brought us to a private interview room. I showed him everything, the medical records, the financial documents, the emails between Garrison and Poet, the witness statements. He listened carefully. Taking notes, Mrs. Morrison, he said when I finished. What you've described is serious, but you understand you've committed fraud yourself by faking your death. I know, I said, I'm willing to face those consequences, but I need Garrison held accountable for what he did to me. Detective Rashid made some calls. Within an hour, 2 more detectives joined us, along with an assistant district attorney named Karen Volpe. She reviewed the evidence carefully. This is compelling, she said, but prosecuting domestic violence cases is difficult, especially when the victim initially fled rather than pressing charges. However, the insurance fraud angle is clear. Your husband filed a claim for $200,000 on your life insurance policy. That's definitely fraud if you're alive. My jaw dropped. $200,000. I'd had a small policy through my job at the library. Maybe 20,000. When had he increased it? Miss Volpe pulled up records on her laptop. Your husband took out a new policy on you 8 months ago. $500,000. He's already received the first payment of $200,000. The rest is pending final investigation closure. He'd been planning this, maybe not my exact method of death, but he'd been preparing financially for me to die. The evidence was overwhelming. Miss Volpe made a decision. We're going to arrest your husband for insurance fraud and conspiracy. The domestic violence charges will be harder to prove given the time that's passed, but we'll pursue them. As for you, Mrs. Morrison, you'll need to face charges for faking your death and for the fraud involved in staging the accident. However, given the circumstances and your cooperation, I'll recommend minimal sentencing, probably probation and restitution for investigation costs. Detective Rashid and his team moved quickly. They obtained warrants for Garrison's arrest and to search our house. They also brought Poet in for questioning, since she'd received money from Garrison and had lied to police about my mental state. I watched from the station as they coordinated the arrests. It felt surreal. 2 hours later, Garrison was brought into the station in handcuffs. They'd arrested him at his office. He looked furious, demanding to know what was happening. Then he saw me sitting in the detective's office through the glass window. His face went white. He actually stumbled, reaching for the wall to steady himself. I watched as his expression cycled through shock, disbelief, rage, and finally calculation. Even now, even caught, his mind was working on how to spin this. Detective Rashid interviewed him while I observed through one-way glass. Garrison denied everything at first, said I must have faked my death without his knowledge, that he was a victim too. But when they showed him the emails, the financial records, the witness statements, his story started falling apart. He tried to claim the affair with Poet had started after my death, that they'd bonded in grief, but the bank records proved money had been flowing to her for years. He tried to explain away my injuries as accidents, but 12 suspicious incidents over 20 years was too much coincidence. Finally, when they told him about the increased life insurance policy and the payout he'd claimed, he went silent. His lawyer, a slick man named Thompson, advised him to stop talking. Poet was brought in next. She cried immediately upon seeing me alive, kept saying she couldn't believe it, that she'd thought I was really dead. But Detective Rashid wasn't buying it. He showed her the emails discussing how much easier life would be without me, showed her the bank transfers, asked her about her statement at my funeral painting me as suicidal. The arrests made headlines. Local woman fakes death to escape abuse. Husband arrested for fraud. The story went viral. News crews camped outside the police station. My sons called from California and Texas, confused and angry and relieved all at once. I'd have to rebuild those relationships slowly. The legal proceedings took months. Garrison was charged with insurance fraud, conspiracy, and multiple counts of domestic violence. The evidence was overwhelming. He took a plea deal, 15 years in prison rather than risk trial. Poet was charged as an accessory to fraud and with filing a false police report. She got 3 years probation and had to repay the money Garrison had given her. I was charged with fraud and filing a false report. True to her word, Miss Valp recommended probation. I got 2 years supervised probation and had to pay $50,000 in restitution for investigation costs. The life insurance company sued me for their costs too. I lost everything financially, but I was free. I moved to Oregon anyway, using my real name this time. Got a job at a women's shelter, helping other abuse survivors. Sharing my story, I'm 63 now, 2 years since my death and resurrection. I have a small apartment, a cat named Phoenix, and peace for the first time in decades. Was it worth it? Absolutely. Sometimes the only way to escape is to disappear completely. Then come back on your own terms with the truth as your weapon. If you made it to the end, thank you for listening to my story. I know it sounds extreme, like something from a thriller novel, but for many women trapped in abusive marriages, extreme measures feel like the only option. I don't recommend faking your deaths. The legal consequences are real, and I was fortunate that the prosecutor understood my circumstances. What I do recommend is this: document everything. Every injury, every threat, every incident. Tell people you trust what's happening. And most importantly, reach out for help before it gets to the point where you feel death is your only escape. There are resources available: domestic violence hotlines, shelters, legal advocates who specialize in helping abuse victims leave safely. It's not easy and it's terrifying, but it's possible to escape without having to stage your own death. The hardest part of my story wasn't faking my death or even facing criminal charges. It was accepting that my best friend of 40 years had betrayed me so completely, that the two people I trusted most were the ones causing me the most harm. That realization nearly broke me. But I survived, I rebuilt, and now I spend my days helping other women find their own paths to freedom. If you're in an abusive situation, please know that you deserve better. You deserve safety, respect, and a life without fear. And there are people like Mercy out there who will help you find it. You don't have to die to be free. You just have to be brave enough to ask for help. Domestic violence affects 1 in 4 women. If you're experiencing abuse, help is available. Call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or text START to 88788. Faking your death is illegal and dangerous. There are legal ways to escape. Document abuse, contact local domestic violence services, and create a safety plan. You deserve to live free from fear. And now, to the lovely viewers of this channel. Got a story? We want to hear it. Your voice matters here, whether it's a personal experience, a revenge moment, a wild betrayal, or just an idea that could make our next story even better. We're listening. Tell us what themes you want more of. What twists keep you hooked? What hit you hardest in this story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. The best suggestions might become our next viral story. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more satisfying stories like this.